one thing that many people don't know is, what is it like for a player to be traded in the middle of the season? What are some of the things you got to deal with, and how does the team help you out? So when players get traded, these are the main things that happen. Now, hey, I have something to show you. We have a Substack now. It's totally free. And with that free subscription, you will get a weekly newsletter that keeps you up to date on everything that we are doing here at Mayday Media. If you choose to become a paid subscriber, you get a bunch more things. Exclusive ability to DM me with any of your questions, and maybe you'll make it into the next Q&A episode. And you'll even get recognition at the end of every show and every video. Substack. It's where I'm at. Now, I've been traded before, but I was traded in the offseason. So in the offseason between 2012 and 2013, I was in the minor leagues, along with Vance Worley for Ben Revere to the Twins from the Phillies. To be honest, I found out about that trade on Twitter in 2012. So you can only imagine what it's like 13 years later. Also, in 2023, I was heavily floated as a person that could be traded from the Oakland Athletics at the time to someone who needed back-end bullpen help, because at that time I was the closer and I was throwing really well, and it never came to fruition, which was to this day a little baffling. But I also had that anxiety IL stuff at the beginning of the year, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit if no one wanted to deal with that. Anyways, that's not what I meant to talk about. So I have experience with trades and the trade deadline, but there are some rules that are followed. It's like a protocol for once you're traded, how things work, and frankly, a lot of it sucks, and for me, I would have absolutely despised this. Fortunately, I didn't have a young family. I didn't have any kids or anything, which will make all this stuff so much worse. So just imagine everything I said, but also with like 2 kids under 5 or something, which is like half the league. So when you are traded, there are 2 ways you usually find out. If you are at the field, you are usually called into the GM or into the manager's office, and the GM or the president of baseball operations or someone from the executive team sits you down and says, hey, you've been traded. Thank you so much for your service. Go make us regret it. That's like something they love to say is like, you know what? I am more than happy to regret letting you go because you've played so well. Whether or not they mean that, it probably depends on the person. But this is at the field. If it's in the middle of the game, you get pulled off the field, you just know. The second part of that, if you're not at the field, it is very likely that you find out on social media. Very likely, because these insiders are so on top of this, the Jeff Passons, the John Heymans of the world, they're so quick with the story that the chances that if you don't see it, someone in your family or one of your friends is gonna see it, and they are going to call/text you immediately. The number of guys that find out on social media before anyone else can tell them is very high. So usually you're hearing from the GM at some point, and then the other GM will call you. In my case, I was called by the Twins GM before Ruben Amaro, the Phillies GM, called me, which I wasn't super pumped about, but I'll be honest, it kind of tracked with how that kind of worked at the time. If you are renting an apartment or a house, which is most, players who have purchased places in the city that they play usually have long-term contracts, and if they have a big investment in that city, there's a no trade clause. They got to be in the situation. They got to be in the process. So they usually find out just by, context. But what you really do is when you have an apartment or you have a house that you're renting, an Airbnb, if you have a lease going through the season, there is a stipulation in the CBA, which there's another positive thing that players fought for, is that all you have to do is hand your keys over to the team, and they are now responsible, the team you were just on. They are now responsible for your rent, for the rest of that lease. Now it's their responsibility. You are off the hook, and you should have to not worry about that at all. Of course, that doesn't go super smoothly every time, but at least the financial part of it is easily figured out. The vast majority of the time, the team then takes those keys and then sublets it to somebody else on the team. For example, in 2018, when I was brought back up after Ryan Presley was traded, a month or so before Tyler Kinley, shout out to TK, current a reliever for the Rockies, had been DFA'd by the Twins and had vacated his apartment, so it was empty and they were just paying for it. Like, hey, do you want this apartment? I said, sure. I moved into it, and it was in the second floor above a Target in one of the noisiest places on the planet, and it was maybe the worst experience I've ever made. But it was nice to at least have here's the keys, turnkey, go live. The problem with that is you as a player usually have to report to the park right away. You usually get like 1 day of buffer. Hopefully, if you're lucky, there's like an off day or something, or they're about to travel to another city, so you get a day to kind of figure out your affairs. 98% of that stuff falls on your family. The player packs their bag, big suitcase, jamming as much crap into it as possible, their baseball bag, and they get on a flight and they meet the team where they are. They just continue on, and then it's up to your family and also the team, like the clubhouse staff will come out and help move things. But a lot of this burden goes on your family to take care of this stuff. And so shout out to all the families out there that make playing professional baseball possible. And anyone who's single and doesn't have a family usually lives out of a suitcase anyway. So everything they had can fit. And then they'll have like a box or two, so they'll just take it to the field, have them store it, or they'll just have them ship it somewhere and whatever, which in many ways is easier, but is also kind of sad because you're kind of on your own. Once all of that is taken care of and your life has been flipped upside down, you're figuring out now where you're gonna live, and then you have to then go meet your teammates. And for guys who haven't been around very long, this is even harder. But it's a little bit easier if you're a veteran guy that you know that the team knows of you and you've been around for a while. What do you have to do when you get over there? In a very quick amount of time, you have to figure out your role. For example, we have Josh Naylor here. He's got to figure out where he hits in the order. What is he then expected to do in that place in the order? How often he's playing. He's playing first base. Is he going to DH? What's it like playing first base every day in Seattle? Like, there's all this stuff on the surface that you have to get used to. But then on top of all of that, you have to figure out where you fit in the clubhouse, who you vibe with players-wise, and where you sit in the hierarchy of service time. Does this team have a bunch of leaders? Did you just come from a team where you were the leader, and now suddenly you are more of a role player or more of a contributor to the team, and you don't need to be on the mic on the bus, and you don't have to do all the rah-rah speeches or whatever. For example, Ryan McMahon was the veteran on Colorado. From what I've heard anecdotally from people who have been in that clubhouse, it was like a graveyard in there every single day. No one talking to each other. Everyone's like, oh my God, this is awful. Get me out of here, right? Let's just go. Let's do our job and get out of here because things are not very fun right now. And that's a very hard place to be. Then he goes over to New York, where it's a little bit tumultuous also, but it's New York City now. They have a captain. Like, you don't have to worry about leading, but now you have to worry about performance, winning the games much more than you just were. So this is what I thought was the hardest part, was figuring all of this stuff out. And you have to do it in 1 day, right? Sir Anthony Dominguez pitched against his other team. He just walked to the other clubhouse, put on a different jersey, and then pitched against the team he was on hours before in a doubleheader. That's crazy, right? He doesn't know anybody. He just went out to the bullpen and warmed up. It's like he was a guest. It felt like an all-star game for him, I'm sure. But he's been around long enough that he probably had run into some of the people. So the longer you play, there's probably some crossover, a couple guys that you know already that you can then feel comfortable talking to, and then you get kind of going. But if you don't get off the ground running, it can be insane. Also, imagine you're a pitcher. You now have to get on the same page with a catcher that may or may not have caught you before right now. He's got to know what you want to do, where you want to throw it, and how you operate and how you think today, especially for relievers. If that isn't close to dialed in yet, you could make stupid mistakes just because you don't understand each other that could lead to a blow-up inning that is exactly the opposite of what you were traded for to do. That could throw you off hard, and then it could spiral. And that's what you want to avoid more than anything. And that's one of the hardest things to do. Can't imagine what it's like to be Danny Jansen and have to go learn a whole team. But when the catcher's moving, at least they're thinking, I'm learning the whole team, as opposed to one pitcher. The catcher's like, I got this one pitcher, but I know everybody else, so I don't need to put a bunch of effort into this. And that could be a problem. So just something to keep in mind when these guys are moving around, because there are things happening behind the scenes that they are not in control of, and it can really, really suck. But those are the main things that go through in a trade. It sounds pretty straightforward, but there's a lot spinning up here, and you're still supposed to focus on not only playing well, but playing for a team that is presumably better than the team you were just on, and you are going to take more of an active role on. It can be added pressure in an instant, and that can be an issue. And I think that we see sometimes that happens to guys, and they get a little bit buried, and they don't get a lot of grace. And if you don't get a lot of grace, it's just seen as a failure. And then you feel like a failure. You got to deal with that. So keep that in mind when you're seeing these guys move places. Sometimes it might take a couple days. If we can avoid getting on them in their first and second outings or at-bats or whatever, if we can avoid that, it's going to be better long-term. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and if it sounds easy and that you could do it, because I bet you all of you could do this easy, so I don't even know what the point is of even telling you. I don't even understand.